are the right guardrails being thought about here from a global perspective?
So I do think that the right issues and problems are being thought about, but I will caveat that by saying that the problems that we can anticipate today might not be the problems that end up causing us the most consternation once these technologies become more widespread. But I do think the level of literacy when it comes to what the real concerns are and also what the possibilities are being thought about. Concerns around elections and disinformation and disruption of the democratic process, concerns about workforce and job displacement, and concerns about how we interact with systems and what morals and values get put into these systems on the forefront. So I do think the right questions are being asked. Of course, we can only know what we know now, and 10 years from now, we might say that we were completely looking at the problems from a different era.
Lindsay, when we look at what the EU, for example, is thinking of putting in place, they want to produce risk assessments, they want to see a summarised of copyrighted material that models have been trained on. They also want it to be flagged when you're looking at AI in general, but most notably if you're looking at deep fakes. Does that, to your point of view, go far enough? And ultimately, are we just in a game of whack-a-mole all over again?
I certainly hope not. I think the EU has obviously taken one of the most aggressive approaches to thoughtful regulation of AI with the EU AI Act and the risk-based approach. Now, in the US, NIST has also put out a risk-based framework on AI. That's the National Institute of Standards and Technology, but it's completely voluntary. One thing that I think the EU has kind of in its pocket as perhaps an advantage in coming up with thoughtful regulation is that it already has existing frameworks around data privacy. Today at the hearing, you heard multiple senators talk about the need for protecting data that's training these AI models, because ultimately, if you're training the data on certain models, those biases and the biases in the data are going to be propagated, and the values in the data are going to be propagated through for the models. Now, the EU has the general data privacy framework. The US doesn't have that, and it's a little bit concerning that despite the enthusiasm with which lawmakers are tackling the AI issue, which is a positive, that we're still not able to pass federal data privacy legislation. So I do think the EU has a leg up in applying their existing frameworks, and that's why we've seen countries such as Italy apply the general data protection regulation to ChatGPT and have that basis for what are the things that need to be demanded, the common uses, the justifiability of that, which Sam Altman alluded to today.
Ed, it is notable, isn't it? Every conversation we have tends to involve regulation. Everyone seems to agree it's needed, yes, and not just self-regulation. But the applications of so doing is still sort of a black box here.
Yeah, the difference our guests notify us off on this show, Lindsay, is that if you regulate the deep learning part, the training of the models, you might kill innovation. There is a difference between regulating inference, or in other words, the use of artificial technology, the tool, and the development of it. Where do you think we should focus our regulatory efforts?
Yeah, this is really the debate that you heard in the hearing, which is, do we take an approach of only regulating at the point where technology meets society, i.e. the applications, or do we need to regulate in the model development? And I think both have some merits. Clearly, we need to regulate in the former case and focus on the actual harms that are being caused in society or that could be caused. But that said, those harms are not technology neutral. They are not applicable regardless of how you train the model. So I think that's where it gets a little bit complicated, yes, where actually the inputs to the training do make a difference on how the harms could get propagated once technology meets society. And this idea, though, that lawmakers have said today that we had with Section 230, where we said companies just go develop and we'll give you the space and not regulate, I don't think that's going to fly now in the AI era.
Do you agree with Sam Altman that the US should establish an agency to license AI development?
I would like to hear more arguments on both sides, to be honest. I think we've just gotten to the scratching the surface on whether we need a whole new agency. But the point that I really do agree with that Sam and others made is that we definitely need much more resources, whether that's with existing agencies or in fact a new agency. the idea that we could keep up with these developments and that regulators and policymakers could keep up with these developments without throwing significantly more resources into just hiring technical experts to understand and to craft policy solutions on them, I think is completely crazy. So whether that's a new agency or significantly beefing up of existing agencies, we definitely need a significant resource investment.